Welcome back to Say Chat, a podcast that breaks down complex game subjects into bite-sized pieces for your enjoyment. I am back with our season 2 cast, kind of, with a guest. I'm here with Chef, Zee,
Yo,
and Kara,
Hello.
our beautiful guest
Hi.
again, and our amazing panelists. Thank you again for filling in, Kara. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, sadly, our other two panelists were not able to make it today, Sahana and Regal, but they will ideally be back with us for the last 3 episodes of the season. Um, yeah, but either way, we're very excited to have her here with us. She's been putting some amazing input into the episodes that we've had. If you guys didn't tune in last episode, we kind of talked about the different play styles of World versus World. We discussed how the ecosystem of World versus World kind of supports all of these play styles and how the play styles affect the World versus World ecosystem. Which brings us to the next layer of the complex game mode, how these roles affect the overall Borderlands. World versus World is basically a team game. I mean, if you look at it and break it down and dissect it and look at its very core foundations, it is a team game. It's a team game mode. When every piece of the puzzle, every role, every play style affects the team and develops these different cultures, like we said last episode. While we want to dissect the play styles, we didn't really talk about what these roles mean to the overall game mode and how these roles eventually or do affect team play. So, Kara, I'm gonna toss it over to you, and I just basically want to know what are, at the very, very basic level, the play styles that you see in World versus World.
Well, you've got your very large scale groups, like an Indo with his 50-man group, or, Nick with his 50-man group, who all fight each other. Um, your slightly smaller large scale groups, those are sometimes closed. The ones people call more fight guilds. Those tend to be 15 to 30, maybe 40 people sometimes. All in a group of a very particular composition of builds with very particular goals, generally to kill one another, not interested in objectives. You have smaller scale groups, havoc groups, and what did you call that last time, Chef? Chaos goblins, like
yeah,
the Z
little
group,
little gremlins.
Like
The
Nigel,
little gremlins.
the little gremlins.
doing sneaky awesome things
Mm-hmm.
off on the side, making chaos wherever they go. You have roamers doing their own thing, and people who are duelists and do nothing but look for one other guy to kill all the time. And yeah, they all work together in different ecosystems to create the different servers, and that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good breakdown of it. I like that. For the other two, since you did an amazing explanation, I won't bug you with this question. But what do these play styles usually break down to role wise? So roamers could probably scout, or they could do their roaming things and go duel in the dueling spots. Like what do these, if you take these basic explanations, what do they usually break down to role wise when you look at a World versus World server?
So your Zerg fights, your large scale fights, and your small scale fights are generally not really looking at PPT, like actually flipping objectives, unless an objective could serve a function as a place to fight. Like sometimes you will attack a keep in order to draw a fight, not necessarily because you want to flip the keep itself. There are some large groups that are like fully PPT groups and are mostly interested in flipping stuff. But I would say more common is that you'll have a comp group of like 25 people who's looking for fights and will sometimes use structures as a way to get those fights.
Okay.
It's The dynamic between large scale and small scale is really complicated because the last couple balance patches have made it more difficult, in my opinion, to fight outnumbered. You have a worse ability to punch up as a smaller group after the changes to things like Winds of Disenchantment not preventing boon application, and after the changes to Scourge's Trail of Anguish not having a target cap. It's more difficult to fight outnumbered now, which means that most of the time you might have like one big group, one full 50-man group versus like two 20-man groups or like a 30-man group and a 10-man group. And so there's a bit of a dance, like a dynamic of trying to find who the right group to fight alongside is so that the fights you're taking are reasonably level and neither side gets bored or discouraged and just leaves. And then for the duelists just like they stay out of the way because there's not many of them. And most larger groups will know to like don't interrupt duels is a pretty common kind of like unspoken rule of world versus world. If you see two people dueling, you generally shouldn't add because they're like doing their own thing.
True. Zee, do you want to chime in on generally what these are, or do you think everything was covered in this way?
I mean, I think most everything was covered. I mean, are we going down like the list of like scouting, making calls and things like that, or
We can if you want. We can if you want. I am doing this episode more open form, and we're gonna break
Yeah.
down how they all come together next.
Oh, okay, I see. I mean, no, I think we pretty much broken down like different like sections of like groups in Worldy World.
Okay. All right. Well
And
then.
yeah, I don't, yeah, because I know I don't want to like talk about something else that will like that's not really a part of like this specific segment.
Okay.
Um
Well then, I'm gonna have you open up for the next
okay.
question and kind of segment. So we have all of these different things that Kara and Chef broke down for, right? We have the basic groups. We have the roaming, the small scale, the medium scale, the large scale, the PPT. And then we have those breaking down into further things like roamers who might duel versus roamers who might wander the map and take small scale objectives type things.
Yeah.
Smaller scale havoc who are like the little stealth goblins as we're calling them. And then we have like the larger scale fights and stuff like that. And then we have like the PPT. All of these different things. That's a lot of different things, right?
Yes.
In one map. Right? Like they're basically like all of these different things could exist in one map, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, one of the borderlands or all of the borderlands. How does the dynamic of all of these different things end up coming together, and how can all of these different play styles that are drastically different if you look at them from an objective, like just looking at them from the base down, how do they all come together and how can they be a team? Like, how does this dynamic work? How does it create this like flowing ecosystem that world versus world is?
I think Z gave a really good answer to this last episode
Oh?
in talking about how when she's commanding, she'll look at the map and she'll figure out like, okay, here's where the big groups are.
Yeah.
They're fighting over this objective, so I'm going to go to this other objective because I don't think they're going to be there.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
it's like kind of, and we talked about this as well, like last season. Not to keep doing like callbacks to other episodes, but last season we talked about world versus world through the eyes of a commander, and one of the things we talked about in that episode was how an effective commander has to have really good map visibility and understand both where groups are on the map and where groups are likely to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a big element of how all of these things work together is, at least from the commander's perspective, as a commander, you know what other groups are on a map because you'll see them. And you also know what those groups prefer to do, which means that you can make a reasonable assumption about where they might go, what their goals are for the night, what kind of structures they're going to hit, what kind of objectives they're going to attack. And I think that fleshes out a lot of that dynamic of how all these different groups work together, is that you can make assumptions about where people are going to go based on what you know about them and what guild they're playing with.
And to add to that, you know, as well, you can while the big groups are doing, you know, their big group roles in the Borderlands, it's why I think having like good communication in the team chat and the map chat, I think is really important. And so the smaller role people, you know, you have your Havocs and you have the scouting and roaming. Those people can take on the roles of kind of filling in the blanks within the Borderlands and can kind of keep everyone else up to date to where the locations for the opposing teams can be. And you can kind of, you know, use that information and see where you can go, where you can sneak in or what to avoid, etc. And that's why I think like making proper calls, right? Having good scouts is, I think, important. And I have definitely been on there's definitely have been some weeks where there have been absolutely no calls and no communication at all, and just everything is like kind of utter chaos. And it's not as fun, you know, at least from your team's perspective.
So
Um,
I have a question,
yeah.
Mhm.
because you did say this was going to be a bit more of an open form episode.
Mhm.
Z mentioned scouting,
Yeah.
and I think everyone who's spent, oh, I don't know, at least like 2 weeks in World versus World has probably either been told that they made a bad scout call or see someone else be told that they made a bad scout call.
True.
And I'm wondering if
Big
one of the
thing.
things that we can do as we're talking about the dynamics between all these different roles is we can just briefly touch on, for you as an individual player who's just getting started in World versus World or has played World versus World for a while but doesn't feel like they have the depth of knowledge, what is it that makes you effective at each of these things? What is an effective scout call? What is an effective small group player? What is an effective large group player? What is an effective duelist? What do you need to know to do all of these things effectively?
I like that. I think we should
That's,
roll off
yeah.
of that.
Okay.
I think that we should basically just dissect it one by one then. We want to go with that route.
Oh,
Now let's start
that
with
could be
scouting,
fun.
since it's the one that just came up.
Since
So
it
when we
is, yeah.
talk about like what makes a good scout call, what's an effective scout call?
To me, personally, I'm actually going to answer a question this time. Ooh.
Oh, so weird.
Oh my gosh. The most effective scout calls, in my opinion, are going to be ones that tell the group, like a description, like a detailed description of the group, what color they are, how many there are, and generally depending on whether or not they're all the same tag or not, what tag they are. That lets the commander know or the map know, okay, this group, this guild is on this map at this location with this many people, and that allows the commanders or whoever is on that map or in team chat to basically decide how they would like to respond. Because let's say there's a commander on another map, right? And they get the call, there's 25 red at Bay, right? And they're a commander that maybe they're a smaller commander like Z. They're 10 people. They can't take on a 25 group. But what happens if they're a bigger commander like Chef? Say Chef hears this call and he's like, okay, I've been fighting this group all night long. I know they're at Bay. I'm going to move maps because I've been enjoying fighting them and my objective is fighting. So having that descriptions right there, those basic things are really, really important in my opinion. But yeah, that's my opinion on like effective scout calling. I don't know if that's the same with all of you, but
Totally agree.
I
I
like that.
do just
Yeah.
want to add,
I
though,
like it.
like
Yeah.
if you're new to scouting or new to World v World, and you're trying to type really fast and count really fast and run really fast at the same time, and you can only get one thing out,
Mhm.
tell everybody how many and where.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yes.
How
Don't
many
just
where?
say
Don't just say ink. Ink is
don't
bad.
just say ink.
Do not ever scout call ink
Ink incoming.
unless you're doing it ironically.
Yeah. I have had people in Say chat, they just say INC, and I'm like, where?
I like
How many?
I
Ink
like
in
the
team chat.
one, yeah, I like the ones in team chat where, like, especially if you don't have the tags that are turned on to say where people are, like which map they're on. Everybody's just like, ink where? You're like, we don't see your map, we don't see any of this stuff. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Fun tip for everyone who's getting into World versus World, since you guys are new players, go into your chat settings and make sure you have turned the tag turned on, and it will. What tag is it? The one that shows them which map it is that the player's on.
It's not even in like general. It's in your chat settings. You like click the gear on your chat. It gives you like a little bracket that says what map the
Yes,
message
I
came
have
from.
that
So like a
turned
team chat
on.
message will say EBG, or it'll say GBL, or it'll say BBL.
Turn that
So
on.
you like actually know what map someone is on when they're
Yeah.
saying something. It's very helpful.
The box
I'm
very
is
sure.
like a show channel tag.
Show channel.
Show channel tag.
Yeah, show
Okay.
channel tag.
Okay. Yeah, that one. Go
It's a good
turn that
setting.
on. Go turn that on.
Please.
Yes.
It will help you out so much.
It will. It will. Yeah. That's like one of the biggest tips, honestly, especially if you want to understand and read chat and communicate and stuff like that. Very big.
The other thing for scouting to touch on is if nobody responds to your scout call, that is not your fault. Sometimes people have other things going on. Sometimes people won't take a fight. Like if I'm commanding and I've got 40 people on me because I'm open tagged, and you call, hey, there's like 10 people taking a tower in Red BL, I'm probably not going to respond to that, because me bringing 40 people to respond to 10 people is not an effective use of resources.
Not efficient, no.
It might
Not
cost
at
us
all.
the tower, but like a group of 40 people can do a lot more than defend one tower. And that's not your fault for making the scout call. It was a good scout call. It just means that, we didn't have a group that was around to respond to it. So don't get discouraged if you're making scout calls and nobody shows up. It's not on you.
Yeah, and the reverse could happen too. It might not be like you have a 40-man group and there's a 10-man group. It might be that we have a 10-man group and there's a 40-man group attacking one of our keeps, and we can't respond to that as a 10-man group. That's just not plausible. So it would be better and more effective for us as players to go and take something else in the meantime while they're busy with the keep or the tower, and kind of offer a trade type thing. So when you do call outs, yeah, it's definitely important that you understand that while you do make the call out, there might not be a group that's would be able to effectively respond to that call out, and to not get salty in chat about it.
Please don't.
Yeah.
Because that is also you taking over the chat, and that is also kind of frowned upon. It's not your personal chat bubble, so like don't treat it as such.
Another thing that we can kind of go into in regards to scouting, not making callouts, but how to effectively scout in general. I know that it's more of a niche thing now. Scouts aren't as popular anymore, because people want to be with groups and active and stuff like that. But how would one be an effective scout if they wanted to be? Say they join a larger group, they get squad participation, and they're told to scout. How would you guys approach or have an effective mindset for scouting in that way?
I'd AFK on top of a keep lord, and then I'd tell people in squad, hey, if I die, there's a group on the keep lord.
I mean, that's a way to do it.
Honestly, that's a strat.
Yeah, if you're like busy and doing other things and you can't like actively play the game, that is definitely a way to do it.
Or like AFK at a very popular prep spot.
Yeah.
On outer, if I die, it means that they are on outer and you should hurry.
Yes.
You can make yourself the most obvious scout in the world, and people still can't resist the siren call of maybe getting one bag from you.
It's true.
No, like it's all that people are. We have a saying like any like single person just doing stuff in the borderlands and they don't really see your group sneaking. We're not really sneaking up behind you, but we're about to pounce on you with like 5 to 10 war claws.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to say hello, welcome to Worldly World, hope you enjoy your stay, and we move on.
The serious answer, though, is to always have your minimap open and to look for orange
Yes.
swords and white swords, because they'll
Yes.
communicate to you where enemy groups are doing something.
For
True.
sure, for sure. I'm always opening up map, seeing what's happening, and occasionally might fall off a cliff, but that's just me not knowing where I am.
True. Yeah, I like watching map indicators. You can actually learn a lot off of the map, and I know as a new player this might be something that you are going to have to get used to. You're going to have to learn how to read the map and all the things that are going on. But generally there are a few things. If you're trying to track a large group, you're going to want to look for orange swords. That means that 2 large groups of people are fighting. White swords on the icons of the objectives. That means that those are contested and being attacked. And also another thing is looking for orange dots on the map by sentries. Generally, you won't see them in large numbers. Sometimes you will. It depends on, whether the commander is trying to be sneaky beaky or not. But generally what will happen is a commander will send 2 to 3 people ahead of their squad to take down the sentry. So you can either read it as, these 3 people are taking down the sentry. Maybe they're roamers, but they also could be the large squad. If you know that the large squad was in that area, maybe that's an indicator that they're heading in that direction. It's all going to be, honestly, it's going to come down to a lot of game sense, almost, at the end of the day, when you get down to it. And knowing this can help you as a scout, and it could also help you in other ways, especially for commanders. And we talked about that a little bit in the last season. But yeah, is there anything else you guys think would be included in being like an effective scout?
Check if your map is queued before you make a scout call in map chat or team chat.
Ooh,
Map chat is fine
yeah.
because map only goes to people on your map, but it's for the love of God, don't call that there's a group at Umberglade on EBG when it's like 30 minutes after reset and the queue to get onto EBG is 50 people. Like, I can't
That's
help you.
just not gonna happen.
There's nothing that I can do for you. You are on your own.
Yeah. There should be
Sorry.
if it's reset, there should be tags on your map that can help you out. Like,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. So how about for like a large group fight or even like small group
I
fight? If you're
actually
going to
would
play
like
with a
to.
coordinated group. Oh, you
Go
want
ahead.
to do something else?
No. I was gonna say I would like to go up. So we did
Oh,
roaming.
okay,
I
go
would
for
like
it.
to go small scale next, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So, what do you think would be effective strategies at small scale, or what do you think the small scale can be broken down into first, and then we can break it down even further after that and see what's effective. So small scale like Havoc.
Yeah, like little havoc groups, little
Yeah.
goblin groups, like the kind of stuff that Zee runs. What's
Mhm.
the kind of stuff that you look for in one of those squads, Zee? What makes an effective player if someone's going to be hanging out with you guys?
I mean, what I've been encouraging people to do is to come on, like a good DPS roaming build that they enjoy, or at least since we have some new people, what they want to try out. And we kind of just look for. I honestly look for the maps that do have the large fat groups on them, and also make sure there's a large group on our team to interact with the Zergs, and then try to see what we can go do. A lot of the times we go all the way into North camp on either green or blue or whatever, and just take camps, take Doliacs, maybe sneak a tier 3 tower if we can, if some big groups are getting distracted. Just like little things like that. That's what I look for. And hopefully look at team chat or map chat to see if there are any good calls to let me know who is coming or who is not in the map.
Okay. Okay. Chef, or do you guys want to jump in on this? I know you guys are more medium scale type fighters, but when you look at a Havoc group actually, I like this question. When you look at an effective Havoc group, so you say you're tagged up on your maps, right? You're Chef, you're commanding Kara. I don't know if you command or not.
Not at all.
Okay. So you're with your group and stuff like that. When you see, okay, there's a small Havoc group on the map with me. I'm a commander. I'm going to be doing my own thing over here. What do you think, as a commander of the big group, is an effective way for the Havoc group to play around you? Like, what would help you as a commander for that Havoc group to be doing while you're distracting the bigger groups or fighting and stuff like that?
For Havoc, I think the bigger the group gets, the less important your individual ability is. So in a small Havoc group, every single player in the squad has a much higher impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think because if you're doing Havoc, you're going to be smaller than all the groups around you, you really need to keep your head on a swivel. Like, you have to be aware of where other groups are, whether they're going to push you just to get you away from the rest of the fight, what kind of position you're in, because you don't have the numbers advantage to rely on of being able to, like, hold a choke, for example. You cannot hold a choke if you're like a 15-man Havoc squad that's looking for an opportunity to hit a larger group that's like 40 plus. So I think situational awareness, probably a pretty big one for smaller Havoc squad type things. And I think a lot of that applies to the kind of stuff that Zee does as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the difference in seeing an enemy group come into a keep that you're trying to flip, 2 to 3 seconds could make the difference between you getting out of that keep and then you getting completely rolled by a group that's on top of you with a bunch of war clothes.
Yes.
True. True. Kara, do you want to chime in on some stuff? Or
Well, I don't command, so I can't really say anything to that. What I do notice from a player perspective, what seems to be very effective when my group is playing against maybe a larger group and then there's a Havoc on their map is boy, is there a polite way to say ass jam? There's not, is there? Boy, that Havoc ass jam or that flanking play,
that's sidecar, right?
that sidecar action
sidecar.
can turn a fight in no time, and you can do it with a group of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I've seen 5 or 10 effective players totally rout a 40-man Zerg.
We have done that in EVG before. Portal bomb is your friend.
Or
Portal
those, yes.
portal bombs are fun. I will admit.
are.
I will admit. Okay, so that's kind of a different take on it. We've been kind of talking about more havocing away from the larger groups so far. But there's also another type of, I guess they're just, they're two sides of the same coin, right? There's the Havoc group that's away, and then there's this sidecar. And does someone want to define what a sidecar is? Because this is for newer players, so they won't know what a sidecar is when we say that.
A sidecar is a second group that helps even the numbers between a large scale fight. So if you are a 20-man group and you need to fight a 35-man group, that's a little too big for you to do with numbers alone unless there's a
Mhm.
pretty big skill gap between those two groups. So you need to find yourself like a guild that runs about 10 people to help even that playing field. And that 10-man group would then be your sidecar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what Kara was saying is that sidecars can be another effective way of doing small group content if that's the type of thing that you enjoy more than the large scale. And basically what you would do is you would get the group like Chef said, and you would just hang around the bigger group. And when fights happen, you would just find your opportunity and jump right in there, which is kind of cool. And I feel like it's kind of different than what Zee does. Or Zee, do you think that they're kind of the same thing? You can be that havoc group that's away from them, but when you see a fight going on, you can also respond to it and adapt and stuff like that.
Like, definitely, for
Mhm.
sure. And that's why I've been enjoying, or at least trying to introduce my group to more havocy, because we can do both things
Mm-hmm.
when we happen to encounter, two big groups fighting. We can kind of squeeze our way in there and see what kind of opportunities we can open up for our side so that they can go on through and like uh basically trample the other group potentially. So, giving them an opening of some sorts
Okay.
for
Okay.
sure. It depends on who shows up that night, of course. If we get some new people, I'm not gonna just throw them at the chaos. If I'm gonna be nice.
So you're saying that it's kind of more the advanced style of small group. We have like the introductory havocy stuff, and then we have like the more, okay, we're starting to level up a little. We've got our stats a little high. We can jump in here and sidecar now. I think we can handle it type thing.
I mean, yeah, to think about it that way, because with a havocy group, you, like Chef said, you are responsible for a little bit more than, say, a 2030 group. You have to be a little bit more disciplined, and that takes some time to learn, I guess. So you'll really feel it if you say you're off stack or something like that, or you get a little too close to the very fat group that can throw 20 AoEs at you and you're dead in like a second. Um
True.
so yeah, I think it's a little more advanced, or at least I mean, see, like, I won't say advanced because, well, I don't know. I mean, I think so, actually. I'm sorry. I'm like all wishy-washy.
It's okay. It's okay. It was a hard question, honestly.
Yeah, no, because I'm trying to think about all the things you would kind of need to know, like background knowledge, to be comfortable in a sidecar. And it's just like you being comfortable with your rotation, knowing what does damage in your build and your class, etc. And that just takes some time to know. That takes you playing the game a little bit. So yeah, I think it's a little bit more advanced, and not necessarily like, yeah, not necessarily super beginner friendly, unless they're comfortable with maybe playing the game a little bit and they kind of are aware of things more than like a beginner player.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think, just from my experience with my guild, I'm sure other people might have different perspectives.
You mentioned making sure you're like on stack and stuff like that. And I think that
Yeah.
really translates over to medium and large scale, because when you join medium and large scale, what do they usually say? They say stay on stack,
Stay on
because
tack. Yeah.
that's where your stab is going to be, that's where all your support is going to be, that's where all the boons are going to be. So that segues over into medium and large scale really well, and Kara and Chef are going to be our experts in that, definitely. So for you guys, we're going to give you the same exact question. What makes an effective player in the small scale and large scale scene? And I'm grouping them together because they kind of are together, like 25 plus generally tends to be the same thing. Obviously, if you're in large scale, fights are going to be a little bit different if you're in 25, but generally the roles are the same for players. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think would be an effective player, and how would you be an effective player in that environment?
The Beyond Tag.
Um,
Okay.
that helps. I think to be an effective player, you have to be open to input in a way that maybe isn't true for roamers, and I'm not sure about havoc groups. But to be an effective player in one of those larger groups, you do have to know how to move, you do have to know how to be on tag, but none of that is quite as important as being open to feedback and being able to hear, this wasn't exactly what we were trying to do here. We need to do this a different way.
Okay.
And that's kind of a it's kind of a soft skill that's hard to train. And if people don't bring it, it can be difficult to have an effective group.
Do
So
you
I guess what I see the most effective play style for those types of groups is an ability to adapt and improve.
do
Taking
you
criticism.
Yeah. Do you think that that's because in large scale groups roles are more defined? Because with roaming and small scale, right, people generally will have more independent builds. They'll have
Mhm.
things that have their own stab, that have their own condi clears, that have, you know, a little bit more vitality or something like. Although vitality is ran across the board, but you know, sometimes in large group scale they'll mix in berserker. I know some people who run full berserker in World versus World because they trust their support. Do you think that that need to take criticism is because if you're not playing your role right, it can really mess things up?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're not playing your role right, you know that there is a right way to play that role,
Mm-hmm.
rather than roaming where there might be 5,000 different ways to play a certain kind of role that you're doing. If you're a support in one of those large groups and your players aren't getting cleansed, it doesn't matter if you came up with the coolest build in the world. If your cleanses aren't pumping, you're not doing your job.
And even beyond that, I am as guilty of this as anyone else. Like, I'll put that forward first, but it's the coordination in your squad is so much more important than individual skill at a large scale.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, like, let's say that I'm on, Reaper one night and I see an opportunity for a sick well bomb. So I put my wells down, I pop into Shroud, I burn all my cooldowns, but I have to go like off stack to do that, which means two things have now happened. The first thing that happens is, despite the fact that I did great personal damage, I didn't sync any of my damage up with anyone else. So we had a worse ability to generate and convert downs because I didn't cast my skills at the same time as other Necros. And I also had to go off stack to do it, which means that my Firebrand and my Tempest or my Engineer, whoever was my support, had to blow cooldowns to keep me alive, which actively hurts everyone else in my party. So despite the fact that I saw an opportunity to make a good play, I've actually hurt my squad by doing it because the coordination in the squad is so much more important than any individual play that any player makes.
Okay. Oh man, that's a deep conversation. It's also
So
like
deep.
I know
Oh.
it's also a really good conversation. I really like
It's really hard to get people used to that
it's very
in group
hard.
content. The most
Really,
effective
really.
thing that you can do is like participate in your group rather than make a good individual play. It took me a long time to get over. I know a lot of other people who play a lot of world versus world, like a lot of world versus world,
We still aren't
but
over
are
it.
not good in larger groups because they're just very, very selfish players. They are like excellent, very, very high skill players who don't function well in a group because they play selfish.
And I should caveat here that it's okay to have that selfish play style. It's okay. It's
Mhm.
okay to be like that, and there's nothing wrong with it. Selfish is usually seen as like a really bad word, right? In this sense, it's not. If you are a selfish player that likes making these plays and stuff like that, maybe large scale gameplay isn't for you, and that's okay.
Yeah, you will make an outstanding roamer or an outstanding player in a small group.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's okay, especially in World versus World, because like we've been talking about for the last 2 episodes, there's all of these different play styles, and they all lend themselves to World versus World, and they all can play a role on the Borderlands. So there's I want to make sure that people know that when we say selfish, like they're selfish players, it's not actually a bad thing. It's just not the best mindset for this particular set of environmental factors, like large scale things and stuff like that. What else do you guys think lends itself really, really well to being a player in not small scale, medium and large scale stuff?
The ability to join comms and listen. You don't have to
Mhm.
talk, but being able to listen to someone say, here's where we're going to go, here's when we're going to use our skills, again, because of how important coordination is, becomes more important in these larger scale fights, so that everyone is using their skills together at the same time.
Is there anything else? I think being in voice is kind of it's kind of just like everyone needs to do. It should be just basic knowledge by now, but this is definitely for newer players. So don't be afraid to join voice. It's very important. And if you're going to be with a group of players, and honestly, it makes your time in World versus World more enjoyable, in my opinion. But that's
You
my opinion.
learn. Yeah, no, you learn so much when you just listen to a commander do stuff on map.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can start to see when and how and like why you put down your abilities in situations. And it's just a really good way to learn World v World, learn your build, just like everything.
Yeah,
It is just way more fun.
it
Also,
is.
yeah, way more fun.
If you're not in comms, you miss the jokes.
True.
Yes.
You don't want to miss the jokes.
True. Okay, so moving.
Oh, actually,
Go
there
ahead.
is one more thing, and
Okay.
it's small, but not small if you're a new player, because when you're new, you're dedicating like all of your account resources to building your World v World build, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to play in one of those larger comped groups, there are builds that each guild uses. And if you show up to that guild and they like you and you're awesome and you're playing something that they don't use, they're not really going to want you to play with them. And that doesn't mean they hate you. And that doesn't mean you're not a good player. That just means that this particular build doesn't have any real use for your Condi Thief. And what they do have is room for 20 people in a squad, because that's how many support players they have.
Mm.
They have enough support
Sometimes
players to
it's
keep 20
literally how
people
many
alive.
firebrands they have.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. So if you really want to be sure that every single comp group is going to want you, play Firebrand.
For now.
But otherwise,
For now.
find a guild build that people like. If you go to if you go to metabattle.com, you can look in the World v World Zerg builds and find something that'll probably work for almost any class you play. Sorry, thieves.
It really is literally only Thief now that there's a viable Druid cleanse
Yeah.
build.
There is, yeah.
Which is fun, by the way, y'all. You'll like it.
I
You
need
gotta
to
play
try
that
it out.
Oh, it's so fun. It can out cleanse those scrappers.
Mhm.
Can it
And
really?
those tempests. Oh,
Yo,
yeah.
no way. Okay, I really need to try it now.
But yeah,
Totally.
it's all about the coordination. And again, remember that Guild Wars from a design standpoint is incredibly alt friendly. It's not the worst thing in the world to have to make another account that you only or
Mhm.
another another character that you only play for World versus World once in a while.
Yeah.
True. True. And if you're playing
Yeah.
World versus World anyway, you're going to get these things that allow you to buy HPs, hero points, that allow you to unlock all of the elite specs. So after you've been playing for a while, making an alt is it's just a walk in the park. I can make an alt today, use 80 tomes of knowledge to level it up to 80, and then buy all of the HPs to unlock all of the elite specs. And it wouldn't be it wouldn't be a chip off my shoulder. It would be nothing, just because I've played and I've built up the currencies and stuff like that. So just know that maybe you make something even that you just aren't enjoying. You could just make another alt. It's not going to be hard to make another alt and gear it up and do all of that stuff eventually. So like don't be afraid to like experiment and stuff like that. So we're at almost 50 minutes, which means that I really do need to wrap this up, but we didn't get to PvP or PPT at all. PvP. PPT is a form of kind of small scale to large scale. Like PPT groups could be anywhere in between. It's definitely its own genre. So I want to just go over really quickly what we think an effective PPT group can be, and then I'll wrap things up.
I think your build probably matters the least in PPT because you generally don't take a lot of fights. You're usually just looking to flip objectives. I guess portals. Full disclaimer: like I don't do a lot of PPT, so this could be like horrible advice. But it strikes me as the kind of thing where like portals are probably pretty good. Mesmer is probably pretty good when you're doing PPTs. You can portal people in and out of objectives. Thief is probably also pretty good in PPT because you can portal people in and out of objectives.
Having supply all the time, definitely important in PPT. Another thing is if you are doing, okay, this just applies to anyone in World versus World. Hot tip, guys, we're throwing it out there. Don't build siege that the commander doesn't throw down, and don't throw down siege if you are not the commander. And then if you're going to be like taking, say they throw a bunch of catapults down, always build from like left to right or right to left, whatever the commander. If you're a commander, make sure you call down what order you want to build in. That way people don't spread out and build like 5 catapults or 5 rams, and then you're just like, okay, well now we have to go back to the camp to get more supply to finish all of this stuff. That's just like a general tip. The general tip.
Yeah. Also remember to keep paper siege on you to throw on people who make stupid mistakes, like fall off a cliff and die to fall damage.
Okay, yes, but only if they're in your group. You can't do that to enemies. Well, you can do it to enemies, but it would be seen as toxic.
I wouldn't endorse this kind of behavior.
Also, don't jump on dead bodies. That's not nice.
Unless they're your friends, then jump on them.
Yes, unless they're your friends.
If they did a cat go splat move in World v World, you can do it then. But don't like murder someone and then jump on their body, because that's just like a 5-year-old thing to do. Yeah.
General tips that weren't supposed to be in this episode, but they are now. Anyway.
Okay.
Do we want to wrap things up now, guys? Do you have anything else that you think needs to be said in this episode before we're done, or?
Learning how to play World versus World is a lifelong process. Don't ever expect that you'll get to a finish line. Just try and get better at something.
True. I like that.
And have fun.
I like that. Yeah. Have fun is a good one. There was a lot of information in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of information. And for you new players that are out there, don't think that you need to have this level of knowledge before you go into World versus World. The people on this panel are very experienced World v Worlders who have either been playing for a long time or have dedicated a lot of hours into World versus World. That's why they know all of this stuff about it, and that's why I invited them here to speak on these things. We just want you to know that there's all of this stuff that's going on, and it can lend to a lot of different play styles and a lot of different roles, and it all affects the Borderlands in different ways, so it's not like any of these aren't going to be valid. And even, we just spoke mostly on like more team-oriented stuff. There's stuff that doesn't really lend to team play in World versus World on the Borderlands at all, like people who just want to duel. They just want to duel. They don't want to scout. They don't want to do any of that other stuff. I don't know much about roaming and dueling, so I can't elaborate on that, but that's going to have a totally different like subset and requires a lot of knowledge on all of that stuff and knowing where the duel spots are and all of that, and there's communities for it. But what I'm trying to get at is that don't feel like you need to know all of this, because it's going to be overwhelming if you try and learn all of this stuff at once. This is just a basic rundown of how, if you like something particularly, you can help the team if you want to help the team. You don't have to help the team. You don't. You could GVG. You could be a GVG group that goes and fights behind Windmill every single day and doesn't do anything for the Borderlands at all, and it'll still be okay. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys so much for joining again, and for everyone on Spotify and YouTube, thank you for listening. Free ways to support: you can like, you could subscribe to the channel, you could share with friends, you can just put the podcast on in the background and let it run so that it helps with view time and the algorithm. All of it completely free way to support and make sure that we're getting our voices out there. But other than that, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time, chat.